Nothing much happens if it's not recording. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about some concepts first. Not too much, because I do feel most of you are adopting the concepts that I would like to see for these short shots, but it's still important to go over them as part of the class. So if we opened up the discussion about chipping versus pitching, what would be the definition of a chip shot for everyone? So we'll just talk about that a little bit more. So my definition of a chip shot would be minimum air time, maximum rolling time. Yep. Pitching is more in the air, or sometimes it can be just a little bit, something like that. And I think it's important to understand that, because when we have certain situations around the green, sometimes it's better to be chipping and running, and sometimes it's better to be playing it more in the air. One of the things that I like also to think about with chipping versus pitching, it's not always about distance. Like you mentioned, distance. It doesn't have to be about distance, because this would be a chip shot. You're going to get on that fluffy stuff. So we can agree that they both went about the same distance. 20 yards or so, whatever that distance is. But one was through the air as a pitch, and one was low to the ground like a chip. Now, let's back up just a little bit. Why do we chip the golf ball? If my ball was here, would I chip? Would you chip this ball here? Would we chip that? This pin? Putt or chip? Second pin? So I would say pretty much all the pros would putt this, even if they're great chippers. If they're going to this pin, I'm not sure about the back pin. So we could agree that we're going to chip the ball when we've decided that we don't want to putt the ball anymore. Brings me to the first rule of the short game, which is to putt before you chip. So I would putt this. I might putt that. At some point, because the ground is messy, now I need to chip. I need to chip the ball or elevate it slightly so I cover this ground. Yep. Now, when I'm back in this situation here and I'm going to that pin, I like to use the second rule of the short game, which is to chip before you pitch. So chipping would still look like this, and chipping and rolling. Yep. So first rule would be putt before you chip before I pitch. And if I've got a shot to that pin, I would pitch before a lob shot, because we know putting is safer than chipping is safer than pitching, and pitching is safer than lobbing it high. And so let's talk a little bit about how do we control the distance, and a little bit about the landing zone or the landing spot that we're looking for. So whenever there's an option to land the ball on the green, we want to do that in chipping, because that gives us the most consistent land and roll. We'll just hit a few shots in there. Look at what's happening with the ball as I'm changing clubs. So when we're chipping, we have the option, or some of you would use one club, maybe sand. So what I seen was most of you were one club and change the swing. So I'll make the swing a bit longer with one club. Generally speaking, if we've got green space to work with, it is good to use different clubs or at least say if you only use one club now, you want to add one more club. That might be a pitching wedge, or it might be a 9-iron if the pin's further away. What I can learn to do is keep the landing zone fairly consistent, we'll just say in that first 3 to 5 feet of the green, and choose different clubs that can send the ball further away. Now the idea with that, if I take my 58, and let's say I'm trying to go to the back pin, I have to make a bigger swing, and if I miss-hit the shot, so I'll hit this one thin, the ball goes flying over the green if I miss-hit it. If I hit too much ground. Now, certain situations we have to play high. There's a bunker or there's a ridge. But for the most part, if we can get the ball landing on the front part of the green and rolling, it's going to be a more consistent option for us. What I want to talk about is just some of the key setup and technique fundamentals for chipping. And then we're going to break up, and we're going to spend some time with everyone just refining the chip shot. So for a standard chip shot, we've got our feet very close together. Yeah, most of you already did this quite well. We're going to stand about 1 foot's width away from the ball. That would be maximum, about a grip length. I'm not going to be over here like a full swing. It makes it quite close. The reason why I've got this workstation set up, it helps me to get into where the ball position would be. With this shaft, I can position my weight slightly towards the target side, so we don't want to be leaning back. If we're leaning back, that could affect contact behind the ball. So we want to have our weight favoring the front side. And with regards to our grip, you can, when you're chipping, hold the grip a little bit more in the palm versus the fingers, a little bit more in the palm. So one of the reasons why we would hold it a little bit more in the palm, because we could say that the chipping, the putting and the chipping action are in the same family. Let's talk a little bit about how the body moves, how the arms move, and how the wrists move. So when we get our setup position, we have our shoulders fairly level, so not too much tilt, so fairly level. And the motion would be a slight tilt of the shoulders going back this way, and then we have a mini pivot of the body going through. Now, if I didn't move my body, so if I didn't move my body, it would look like this. I'd just be moving my arms and my wrists, which wouldn't be good. So what we need to do when we chip is understand that the body will move the arms. So that would be the arms and body together. And this would be what I call a little bit of play in the wrists, just a little bit for feel and to give us a little bit of energy into the club head. So body, arms, a little bit of wrist. So body, arms, a little bit of wrist. Yep. And that would be a good order of how we would be chipping. If I went back correctly and my body stopped on the way through, I'd look like this. So part of the instruction will be myself and Michael just helping to coordinate those movements. They can use a lofted club like a 54 or 56 to start for the short shots, and then we'll introduce one other club, maybe pitching wedge or 9-iron as well. So we'll start to use both. Yeah.